California food workers will be required to use gloves or utensils to handle ready-to-eat food starting in July. But some chefs and bartenders are fighting back. Attorney Bryan Pease is with us to talk more about this controversy. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
The law's been passed, but it doesn't actually take effect till July.
Correct.
So what does it say that's got people worked up?
Well, it's a one-size-fits-all approach, which requires all food handlers to wear gloves if they're going to be handling food. And, you know, there was no resistance from some of the big businesses like McDonald's and Wendy's.
Yeah, the chains.
So anyway, so it's because there wasn't that pushback, it kind of sailed through uncontroversially. And the chefs and gourmet folks and bartenders and people that are trying to infuse herbs and specific flavors into foods that can't, gloves aren't really compatible with that, they didn't even know about it, so they didn't really have an opportunity to comment. And it's just an example of the legislature not really reaching out to the folks who are going to be affected by regulation and, thinking that, well, if there is any pushback, then we'll fix it. But because it was so uncontroversial to, people who didn't know about these specific instances, it ended up being this one-size-fits-all approach that is getting a lot of pushback now, and it's probably going to be repealed.
So these gourmet chefs and bartenders didn't speak up at that point. Now they're speaking up. What are they most upset about? Because obviously food handling is important.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I mean, and there are the issue is to control norovirus, which is this common pathogen that's transmitted by handling food. And most states have some version of a glove law, but California already requires food handlers to minimize contact with food. And if a bartender is putting certain types of flavors in a cocktail, or you have gourmet chefs that are putting different herbs, and you don't want to have latex and powder getting infused.
And they also say sometimes these gloves, if they get used for too long, they're going to transmit.
It can actually be worse. Yeah. And we have serious problems with food safety in this country that goes before the food even gets to the restaurant. I mean, over half, for instance, of meat and poultry that's on supermarket shelves is tested positive for antibacterial resistant staph or MRSA. So we have real problem. We have thousands of people dying per year from foodborne illnesses. A lot of it is caused by we actually feed antibiotics to livestock just routinely, in order to confine them into small spaces, and they're in these filthy conditions. And that's what really needs to be looked at, is the source of food and where the food is coming from. Not to say that there isn't important things having to do with food handling, but it needs to be done in a more tailored way that's not going to
and the bottom line, these gourmet restaurants are pretty much doing what they need to be doing as is.
Exactly right. They're already pretty much doing what they need to do, and then the fast food places are using gloves anyway. And so the California legislature is really just trying to bring California in line with some of the other states that require gloves to be used. But if they're going to do that, then they should have certain exceptions. And they thought that it was going to be done through an exemption that the health department could provide. But then the gourmet chefs and folks that needed the exemption couldn't really figure out how to get one. It wasn't really well written into the law, so it just wasn't impractical.
And this could be a moot point by July, because you think they'll change it, they'll address it.
Oh, that's already been voted unanimously in the Health Committee yesterday of the Assembly to repeal it. And so it's going to go to the legislature, and they're probably going to repeal it. So it's just an example of not needing to have a one-size-fits-all regulation, but we really need to be looking at food at its source, and the salmonella and the E. coli that's caused by this contamination of the way the animals are intensively confined and fed antibiotics. It's creating these antibacterial resistant strains. That's what's really killing people. What we really need to look at.
Bryan Pease, thanks for your expert opinions. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll be right back in just a moment. You're watching